In 47 seconds, 12 Taliban fighters would commit the most costly mistake of their lives. At 3:47 local time in Helmand province, a formation of 3 teams of 4 men each was silently crawling across the rocky terrain toward what they believed was a poorly defended Afghan outpost. They had planned this operation for 3 weeks. The target seemed perfect: a small base with barely 40 Afghan soldiers, basic equipment, and minimal defenses. But there was a fundamental problem. Their GPS coordinates were off by 800 meters, a seemingly insignificant error that led them directly toward a classified American installation with 120 personnel. The Taliban fighters carried standard armament for this type of assault: AK-47S, RPGs with tandem warheads, and homemade IEDs weighing 15 kilograms each. They had traveled 2.3 kilometers from the Hindu Kush Mountains, moving in tactical formation under cover of night. Their plan was simple: quick assault, take control before they could call for reinforcements. But 23 seconds later, the American base's AN, GSS-1 perimeter sensors automatically detected 12 thermal signatures moving in military formation. The difference between attacking an Afghan base and an American one wasn't just the number of soldiers. It was an entire generation of defensive technology. While an Afghan outpost would depend on sentries with binoculars and perhaps a couple of machine guns, this installation had automated surveillance towers, perimeter seismic sensors, and alert systems that could activate a response in less than 45 seconds. The control center immediately activated Code Red. At that moment, the Taliban were 300 meters from the perimeter, still believing they would face minimal resistance. When they finally saw the American installations, the MRAP vehicles, advanced communication antennas, and equipment that clearly didn't belong to an Afghan base, it was already too late to withdraw without being detected. They had 2 options: abandon the mission after weeks of preparation, or continue with the original attack. In a decision that would seal their fate, they chose to proceed. What they didn't know was that in 6 minutes, their mistake would become the most devastating military response the United States had executed on Afghan territory in the last 3 years. The American reaction speed was something the Taliban had never experienced. In exactly 23 seconds from initial detection, the base had activated its complete defense protocol. An encrypted communications network simultaneously alerted all defensive points, while 48 personnel took positions armed with M4A1S and M249 SAW machine guns. The technological advantage was overwhelming. While the Taliban approached with only their eyes to navigate in the darkness, the American defenders used AN, PVS-14 night vision systems that turned night into day. Each soldier could clearly see the attackers from 400 meters away, while the Taliban remained practically blind. At 3:48, exactly 1 minute later, the first Taliban shots broke the silence. A burst of AK-47 fire at 300 meters that impacted against the fortified structures without causing damage. The response was immediate and coordinated. Suppressive fire from 4 different positions that transformed the approach zone into a killing field. In the first 90 seconds of the engagement, 847 projectiles were fired. The difference in training was evident in the statistics. American soldiers maintained 34% accuracy in night combat, while the Taliban barely reached 11%. Each American shot had a specific intention. Each burst was calculated for maximum effect. Advanced systems quickly came into action, and PAC-4C laser illuminators painted targets to facilitate aiming, while M856 tracer ammunition, every 5th round, created lines of fire that allowed instant corrections. It was as if the Taliban had brought knives to a rifle fight. The first Taliban RPG impacted 8 meters from the main bunker at 3 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds, creating an explosion that briefly illuminated the battlefield. The response was swift. A 40mm M203 fragmentation grenade neutralized the grenade launcher position in seconds. But what really changed the dynamics was the call for reinforcements. At 3 hours, 49 minutes, and 45 seconds, the base commander requested close air support. The nearest AH-64 Apache helicopters were just 12 minutes away, and precision military GPS coordinates had already been transmitted. What had begun as a defensive operation was about to become a demonstration of air power that the Taliban would remember for the rest of their lives. At 4 o'clock, 2 AH-64E Apache Guardian helicopters took off from Shank Base with a lethal load that would shake the mountains. Each helicopter carried 16 Hellfire AGM, 114R missiles, and an M230 30mm cannon capable of firing 625 rounds per minute. Flying at 284 kilometers per hour at just 150 meters altitude, they headed toward the coordinates where the Taliban had made their fatal mistake. The Apache's FLIR, forward-looking infrared, system detected thermal signatures from 8 kilometers away. On the pilot's screens, 11 heat points clearly appeared moving in tactical formation. One Taliban had already been eliminated by ground fire. Thermal imaging technology didn't lie. Those were hostile combatants attacking an American installation. Authorization came quick and clear. Weapons free. The pilots had green light to eliminate any threat. A minute and a half later, the first Hellfire missile shot toward a Taliban position carrying an RPG 340 meters from the base. With a flight time of just 8.7 seconds and traveling at 475 meters per second, the missile converted the position into a 20-meter radius crater. Air-ground coordination worked like Swiss clockwork. From the base, soldiers used AN, PEQ-2A, laser designation systems to mark specific targets, while the Apaches received coordinates in real time through encrypted tactical frequencies. It was a symphony of destruction, orchestrated with surgical precision. The second Hellfire missile eliminated another Taliban position at 4:03, then the third and the fourth. In less than 4 minutes, 7 Taliban fighters had been eliminated by precision airstrikes. The Apaches didn't waste ammunition. Each missile had a confirmed target. Each shot was accurate. The surviving Taliban attempted to disperse, but thermal tracking systems followed them like luminous ghosts in the darkness. There was nowhere to hide from the electronic eye of the Apaches. Their AK-47S and RPGs, which moments before seemed like formidable weapons, now felt like toys against American military technology. But this was only the beginning. The 800-meter error had not only resulted in a successful defense, it had unleashed a response that would extend far beyond that base in the Helmand Mountains. The regional command center was not satisfied with repelling the attack. The decision came from the highest levels. An assault on a classified installation warranted a response that would send a clear message to all Taliban cells in the region. At 4:15, additional resources were activated that would transform a defensive operation into a retaliation campaign. An F-16 Fighting Falcon took off from Bagram Air Base, loaded with laser-guided GBU-12 Paveway 2 bombs weighing 500 pounds each. These weapons could impact targets with 1-meter precision, using infrared seekers that converted each bomb into an intelligent projectile, capable of adjusting its trajectory until the last second. While the F-16 flew toward the combat zone, 23 minutes at cruise speed, real-time intelligence had already identified the origin of the attackers. The NSA had been intercepting Taliban communications for hours, tracking metadata from 47 transmissions in the last 6 hours. All pointed toward a mountain complex 15 kilometers from the attacked base. Intelligence analysis revealed a cell of 35 to 40 combatants operating from a main refuge in the mountains. It wasn't just a camp. It was a command center that had been coordinating attacks in the region for weeks. Analysts identified 3 critical targets: a weapons depot, a communications center, and the main barracks, where most of the cell was housed. At 4:24, the first impact shook the mountains. The GBU-12 bomb penetrated the weapons depot like paper, detonating the 70 pounds of explosive precisely where it would do the most damage. Secondary explosions confirmed what intelligence suspected. There was a considerable arsenal stored in that position. 15 seconds later, the communications center disappeared in a fireball. The bomb effectively cut all communications between this cell and others operating in the region. 44 seconds later, the third bomb impacted the main barracks, eliminating the operational capability of the entire cell. The explosions were so intense they registered on seismic sensors 50 kilometers away. In less than 30 seconds, an operation the Taliban had planned for weeks had resulted in the complete destruction of their base of operations and the elimination of more than half their personnel. The 800-meter error had cost much more than the lives of 12 fighters. It had cost an entire operational network. The final balance of the engagement showed the devastating reality of attacking the wrong target. 23 Taliban combatants had been eliminated between the initial attack and air retaliation, while American casualties were limited to 2 lightly wounded by RPG fragments. The asymmetry wasn't just in numbers, it was in capabilities, technology, and coordination. The inventory of destroyed material revealed the magnitude of the Taliban operation: 18 AK-47 rifles, 4 RPG-7 grenade launchers, 340 kilograms of explosives, and various communication equipment. In contrast, the American operation had cost $847,000 in ammunition, a price they considered more than justified to send a regional message. Communication interceptions in the following hours showed panic in neighboring Taliban cells. Frequencies that normally buzzed with activity became practically silent. 3 secondary positions were immediately abandoned, and local commanders ordered a forced reorganization that would affect their operations for months. The psychological impact was as important as the physical one. The Taliban had learned a brutal lesson about the difference between attacking Afghan and American forces. It wasn't just a matter of numbers or training. It was a technological difference of decades that made any direct confrontation suicide. Post-action analysis revealed fundamental errors in Taliban procedures. Their failure in target reconnaissance had been catastrophic, depending on obsolete civilian navigation technology when facing precision military systems. The human factor had also played a role. Pressure to obtain results had led to hasty decisions that ignored basic verification protocols. The repercussions extended beyond the immediate battlefield. Hostile activity in the region decreased by 40% in the following weeks, while international cooperation was strengthened through intelligence sharing between American and Afghan forces. Base defense protocols were reviewed and strengthened, incorporating lessons learned from this engagement. The message had been sent with crystal clarity. American response capability not only remained intact, but any error in target selection would result in devastating consequences that would extend far beyond the original attack. This incident brutally illustrates the fatal importance of precision in modern military operations. The Taliban not only underestimated the difference between Afghan and American targets, they made a calculation error that led them directly to the heart of one of the world's most sophisticated military machines. Those 800 meters of difference weren't just physical distance. They were decades of technological evolution that separated 2 completely different military worlds. Let's think about the real numbers. 12 combatants with 1980s equipment facing defense systems that process information at speeds they couldn't even imagine. The GSS-1 sensors detected their thermal signatures before they could see the installations. Their AK-47S fired projectiles at 715 meters per second, while Hellfire missiles traveled at 475 meters per second, but with precision guidance that adjusted trajectory 50 times per second. The technological factor was decisive, but it also raises uncomfortable questions that go beyond the immediate result. The 30-year technological gap between both forces determined the outcome from the first second. But was such a forceful response really necessary? The retaliation that destroyed not only the attackers, but their entire operational network goes beyond legitimate defense. It enters the territory of exemplary punishment that redefines the rules of modern conflict. American military doctrine had evolved toward what analysts call layered response. Neutralize the immediate threat, eliminate their capacity for recidivism, and and send a deterrent message to other actors. This wasn't just defense. It was re-engineering the regional threat landscape through demonstration of overwhelming force. This event fundamentally changed the rules of engagement in the region and established precedents that extend far beyond Afghanistan. The disproportionate response sent a clear message not only to the Taliban, but to all regional actors. Attacking American installations, even by mistake, would result in consequences that would extend far beyond the original attack. Cells in Pakistan, Iraq, and Syria immediately recalibrated their operations after this incident. But this raises an important ethical debate that will resonate for years. Where is the line between legitimate defense and excessive retaliation? The $847,000 in ammunition spent to neutralize a threat that had cost perhaps $50. In Taliban equipment represents more than an economic difference. It represents a philosophy of war that prioritizes deterrence over proportionality. The most uncomfortable question is whether this strategy actually created more security or simply more long-term resentment. It's true that Taliban activity decreased 40% in the short term, but counterterrorism studies suggest that such brutal demonstrations of force can radicalize future combatants. What long-term effects will such a brutal demonstration of military power have? Is a strategy that responds to each attack with massive retaliation sustainable? What this incident teaches us is the critical importance of verifying targets in modern conflicts, but it also reveals how modern asymmetric warfare can quickly get out of control. Human error amplified by technological superiority creates devastating results that go far beyond the original intentions of both parties. It's a crude reminder of the realities of asymmetric conflict in the 21st century, where technology converts tactical errors into strategic catastrophes. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos.